Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into a time when the sun baked the cobblestones of central Mexico, when cicadas droned like tired violins, and when, believe it or not, a dog might greet you from the steps of the mayor's office. Yep, not in a cartoon, not in a fevered dream, but in the very real dusty streets of El Rosario. You're standing there now. It's late, and the lanterns hanging from adobe walls flicker like they're gossiping. There's a breeze, warm, like someone whispering a secret to close. And in the middle of it all, there's a dog, not barking, just watching, judging, politely. You're about to learn how a creature who licks his own behind with dignity somehow earned a desk, a key to the city, and, eventually, a bronze statue. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where and when are you listening from tonight? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking through El Rosario with shoes that crunch on gravel, the sleepy kind that never got swept because, well, nobody wanted to wake the chickens. The year somewhere around 1885, give or take a few tamales, and people still argue over whose mule was technically first across the bridge that summer. The buildings are squat, whitewashed, and sun-bleached. Bougainvillea vines spill over doorways like they can't help showing off. You pass a tailor sewing with one hand and scratching his armpit with the other. Multitasking. 19th century edition. And then there's the plaza, not grand, not even square, just ... there. A few beaux chase a hoop, a Señora yells at them with a sandal in hand. The universal sign of maternal justice. But you're looking past all of that. You see him, Sancho. Not the wild-eyed, flea-ridden mutt some legends turn him into. No, Sancho's coat gleams like he was hand-buffed by angels, or at least by Rosa, the baker's daughter, who swears he once fetched her lost ribbon from a cactus patch. His ears twitch at every sound, a dropped coin, a curse, a mango splat. Not out of fear, out of awareness. You walk a bit closer. He doesn't move. He's guarding the old mission steps like he owns them. Well, he sort of does. Back then, nobody really chose Sancho. He just started showing up. One morning, there he was, napping beside the town hall door, paws crossed like an old man waiting for a haircut. The next day, same spot. By the end of the week, people started greeting him like he worked there. By the end of the month, someone gave him a name. And once you name something in a town like El Rosario, it becomes part of the family, or part of the government, apparently. They say the priest joked once that Sancho had better attendance at council meetings than the actual council, which, to be fair, wasn't hard. The old mayor often slept through debates, usually snoring in a way that sounded suspiciously like no taxes. At first, Sancho's presence was just amusing. He'd sit beside the magistrate's chair, looking serious, or constipated. It was hard to tell, but then something weird happened. People started behaving better around him. Like, genuinely better. One merchant confessed he didn't raise prices during the fiesta because Sancho was watching. A teenager left an apology note for smashing a lantern, addressed to El Señor Sancho. Even couples fought more quietly in the plaza, glancing sideways like the dog might sigh disapprovingly. It was uncanny. Historians still debate whether it was a case of mass projection, a very subtle social experiment, or just the town being deeply bored. Honestly, it might be all three. One thing's certain, Sancho filled a gap, not of leadership exactly, but of presence. See, El Rosario was tired of the bickering, of promises that dissolved faster than sugar in mezcal. The previous mayor, Señor Torrado, had once tried to outlaw clouds because they interfered with morale. And don't get anyone started on Deputy Mayor Juarez, who built a statue of himself riding a chicken. Compared to that, Sancho was refreshingly silent. He didn't talk back, didn't bribe anyone, didn't misfile a single thing because, well, no thumbs. And when someone left a plate of tamales out, he only ever took one. Just one. That kind of restraint in a politician. Unheard of. It was not done yet. You're still in the plaza, leaning against a sun-warmed wall. The scent of masa and wood smoke lingers in the air like a stubborn ghost. Children have gone home. The sky's deepened into a bruised blue, and crickets are tuning up for their nightly symphony. Sancho's curled near the fountain now, eyes half shut but ears twitching, always on duty. But before Sancho's reign, El Rosario wasn't exactly known for competence in leadership. Let's rewind a bit. Not too far. Just enough to land in the chaotic reign of Mayor Jacinto Orellana, or as locals referred to him, is Forgetfulness. A man with an impressive mustache and an even more impressive ability to forget where he left town records, money, and, on one occasion, his own nephew. Jacinto's defining moment. The Great Warehouse Sale. It began with a group of traveling merchants arriving in El Rosario claiming to sell exotic goods, silks, spices, even a portable thunder machine, which later turned out to be just a tin kettle and some enthusiastic storytelling. Jacinto, trying to impress the town with his economic savvy, made a handshake deal that gave them full rights to use the town storage building for trade. Unfortunately, these merchants weren't traders, they were pirates. Not the sword-wielding kind, more the ledger-falsifying, smoke-bomb-disappearing variety. By the time anyone realized, half the building had been cleared of grain, textiles, and, oddly, 27 ceremonial sombreros. Jacinto responded by declaring, "This is what innovation looks like." That phrase was painted above the empty warehouse for years. Of course, Jacinto was voted out, or would have been, had the vote not been delayed 6 times because he kept misplacing the ballot jar. Eventually, someone just told him he'd retired, and he wandered off toward the hills to draw up blueprints for a better goat. After him came Mayor Elena Rivera. The town's hopes were high. Elena was sharp, spoke 5 languages, and once built a windmill out of recycled spoons. People liked her, for a week. But then came the owl incident. Elena believed owls were an omen of governmental clarity. She even drafted the Nocturnal Wisdom Act, requiring the town to breed and release 1 owl per block. It sounds lovely, until the owls started dive-bombing hats, stealing earrings, and shrieking at dawn. The worst part, they nested in the bell tower and refused to let anyone ring the town bell. Birthdays were forgotten. Mass started late. It was civic chaos. Elena resigned in the night, leaving behind a note that read simply, "I have failed the owls." And then there was Don Tiberio. Tiberio's campaign slogan was "Firm hand, full belly." He handed out tamales at every speech, a strategy so effective that even rival candidates started endorsing him just to get extra salsa. But once elected, his policies took a turn. He tried to introduce a new tax measured in time. Yes, time. People had to donate hours of their week to patriotic silence. Basically, sit still and be quiet on the plaza bench for 45 minutes every Tuesday. When asked why, Tiberio simply replied, "Democracy needs quiet moments." It didn't last. He was quietly ousted during a week, when no one showed up for their silent shift. So, by the time Sancho padded his way into view, the people of El Rosario were emotionally exhausted. Politics had become a cycle of oddities, each weirder than the last. They were ready for stability, even if it had for legs and a tendency to chase his tail during serious discussions. What made it easier to embrace Sancho wasn't just his demeanor. It was what he wasn't. He didn't promise. He didn't bluster. He didn't scribble manifestos on banana leaves or try to outlaw Tuesdays. He just showed up, sat quietly, let kids hug him, kept his nose clean, literally and metaphorically. Still, not everyone was enchanted. One evening, in the dusty corner of the cantina, a small but vocal group, calling themselves Los Humanos Primero Humans First, complained loudly into their mezcal that giving political office to a dog was a slap in the face of rational governance. Ironically, one of their members was the same guy who once tried to install a mayoral parrot. He left in a huff when the parrot refused to learn his campaign slogans. You sip your clay cup of hibiscus tea and look around. The town may be small, but its memories are dense, like old fabric stitched with strange, funny threads. And through it all, Sancho stayed. He didn't bark orders. He didn't fetch votes. He merely existed, steadily. That consistency, that rhythm, it was like a heartbeat in a town that had forgotten how to rest. There's an odd comfort in that, isn't there? The kind of comfort you get when the ceiling fan whirs just right, or when the rain starts tapping gently on a metal roof and you're already warm under your blanket. Sancho was that feeling, but in fur. You blink slowly, the way you do when your mind starts to fog at the edges. A soft voice in the distance, maybe a shopkeeper locking up, blends into the hum of insects. And still, Sancho's tail gives one lazy wag. But the real shift came later, when someone had a wild idea, when frustration hit a boiling point, and a town decided to do the one thing no town had dared before. They held an election, an actual one, with paper, with votes, and Sancho was on the ballot. No joke, no protest, just hope. Wrapped in fur and for legs, but that's a story for another section. The air smells faintly of cinnamon and dust as you drift through the memory. Morning in El Rosario is soft, soft like overripe mangoes, like the hush before a punchline. You wander past shuttered windows and crack signs until you see it. A line of people, curved around the bakery, chattering low like birds hiding gossip in their feathers. Today is election day, and yes, there is a dog on the ballot. You can almost hear the disbelief in your own head, but here they are, the townsfolk of El Rosario, lining up with scraps of folded paper and smirks tugging at their mouths, about to cast votes in what they call a symbolic election. Symbolic, sure. Let's rewind just slightly. The idea had started, as most great ideas do, with a grumble. Don Pedro, retired butcher, part-time accordionist, and full-time opinion dispenser, was at his usual corner table when he declared, "I'd rather vote for that dog than any of the idiots last time." He'd pointed at Sancho, who was curled under a table nearby, quietly chewing on a sandal he'd probably borrowed without asking. Everyone laughed, at first, but the laughter stretched. A week passed, then another. Posters appeared, hand-drawn ones. One simply said, "Sancho. Honest, loyal, doesn't talk too much," the town's new favorite slogan. There were jokes, of course. Parody debates, mock interviews. Sancho, how do you respond to allegations that you chased a chicken in 1883? But something deeper was stirring underneath the humor, a craving for honesty, even if it came in a creature who couldn't hold a pen. The opposition. A man named Raul Matamoros, a former clerk who once tried to introduce a mandatory nap hour for all adults. His speeches were long, wordy, and always ended with, ... but more on that in my 47-point plan. He wore a mustache like a threat and walked like he was allergic to humility. Compared to Raul's pompous strut, Sancho's quiet loitering became strangely dignified. So the day came. The election was held in the plaza, right by the statue of the founding priest, who always looked mildly annoyed. There was no official ballot box, just a wooden crate with photo burned into the side. Rosa handed out slips of paper and gently told a man off for trying to draw a chicken on his. You step closer. One by one, people vote. Some do it with full ceremony, hand to heart, lips pursed in thought. Others snicker and whisper, as they scribble Sancho in large, lopsided letters. A few vote for Raul, out of tradition or spite, or maybe just because his cousin threatened to withhold tamales. But when the votes are counted, Sancho wins, by a landslide, 312 to 28, with one suspicious ballot simply reading, "Bring back the owls." What happens next surprises even the pranksters. The crowd cheers. Not the kind of cheer that follows a joke. This is deeper, relieved, genuine. Sancho doesn't react much. He's napping beneath the bench where the town clerk nearly faints with joy. But someone, probably Rosa, again, places a garland of marigolds around his neck, and the town scribe, a poetic teenager named Ernesto, who always smelled faintly of ink and guava, writes in his journal, "Today, our town chose quiet, over nose, fur over feathers, and paws over politics." I'm not sure if it was wise, but it was right. You wander through the aftermath like a dream. People clink clay cups together. Raul leaves without a word, muttering something about canine conspiracies. Children chant Mayor Sancho, while pretending to arrest each other with sticks. And here's the strange part. The town begins changing. Nothing dramatic, no thunderclaps, no parades, though a few children did tie ribbons around their donkeys and declare them official vehicles. But small, lovely changes. The council meetings, previously loud and circular, become shorter. People speak less and listen more. When disagreements rise, folks glance at Sancho, as if silently asking, is this really worth shouting over? It's absurd, and yet, it works. Sancho starts attending meetings. Not by invitation, of course, he just shows up and sits. Sometimes next to the minutes keeper, sometimes right under the table, gently snoring, and whenever debates get too heated, he stretches, yawns, and pads out of the room. No one wants to be the reason the dog leaves, the most popular town photo that year. Not the Fiesta del Maíz, not the priest riding a borrowed mule, it's Sancho, sitting in front of the town's dusty charter, staring straight at the camera like he knows exactly what Article 4 says. And no, You're not imagining it. There's a quiet reverence building around him. Some people begin to believe Sancho understands, that he nods at wise decisions, that he sulks when the council delays road repairs again, that he once growled when someone suggested demolishing the old well to build a gazebo. Some say he even sneezed on cue during a corrupt merchant's plea for a tax break. Now, of course, not everyone buys into the myth. The visiting school inspector from the city scoffed loudly when he arrived and was greeted by a deputy who pointed proudly at Sancho and said, "That's our mayor." The inspector left early. His buggy mysteriously developed a flat wheel. Twice. Coincidence? Probably. Amusing. Definitely. You're starting to feel it now. That fuzzy, cotton-brained warmth that comes from stories wrapped in odd truths. The kind where details blur but meaning sharpens, where a dog becomes more than a dog, where dignity walks quietly and wags its tail. And you wonder, did Sancho know? Did he feel the weight of all those eyes, those hopes, those unspoken agreements? Or was he just doing what dogs do? Being present, being patient, being better than most of us at remembering what matters. The questions drift around you like night wind. But as your thoughts slow, so does the town. The bells hush, the candles flicker. Somewhere, a lullaby starts. Soft, off-key, exactly right. And Sancho, he shifts his weight, rests his chin on his paws, and waits for tomorrow. You wake inside the story, as if sleep never really came, only softened your steps and dimmed the lamplight. It's dawn in El Rosario, the kind where colors melt gently into one another. Pink clouds stretch like lazy arms across the sky, and the rooftops glow like they've been brushed with gold. You're standing on the edge of the plaza, sipping something warm. Chocolate, maybe, thick and a little bitter, the way old women in the village prefer it. Sancho's already out, of course. He's making his morning rounds, the way he always does. From the fountain to the bakery, where Señora Inés leads a tortilla corner out like clockwork. Then past the schoolhouse, where children shout Buenos Dias, Señor Alcalde, and try to balance their books on their heads in his honor. You trail behind, more shadow than companion now, watching the strange rhythm of a town that, somehow, runs smoother under the paws of a dog. But today's different, because today, a delegation is arriving. Not from the next village over, no. This group comes from the city. Real officials with clipboards, waistcoats, and expressions like dried tamarind. They've heard the rumors, and they are not amused. The carriage arrives just before midday, rolling in like a storm cloud with curtains. Out steps Don Esteban Becerra, Assistant Deputy to the Regional Commissioner of Rural Civic Oversight. His boots gleam. His monocle glints. His attitude arrives 2 minutes before the rest of him. He looks around the plaza with the air of a man judging soup from its smell alone. "This is highly irregular," he says, before anyone even says hello. Rosa offers him guava water. He declines. Sancho offers a tail wag. He sneezes. It's a start. Esteban's here on a mission. Determine whether El Rosario is in compliance with the new provincial governance regulations, or, as locals call them, Las Reglas de Complicación Innecesaria. He wants to see tax records, meeting minutes, official stamps. And most importantly, he wants to meet the mayor. Rosa points, Esteban looks down, and blinks. Sancho blinks back. A standoff for the ages. This, Esteban says, is a joke. Rosa raises an eyebrow. Is it? Esteban demands to see proof of office, so they show him a hand-drawn certificate, signed by 3 elders and paw-printed with blue ink. He scoffs. He checks the town ledger, only to find the most balanced accounts in the region. He examines infrastructure reports, all current. School attendance, up. Market theft, down. Public complaints, 0. Unless you count the parrot who hates being ignored. He grows, flustered. These numbers, he huffs, are manipulated. But he finds no inconsistencies. Finally, frustrated, he calls an emergency town assembly. The townspeople gather in the plaza, curious and sun-drenched. Children perch on crates, old men lean on canes. Dogs settle around the fountain like sleepy sentinels. Esteban takes the stage. A crate, really, and begins to shout. Esteban takes the stage. A crate, really, and begins to shout. Government requires structure. It requires regulation. It requires, above all, dignity. You cannot entrust your future to a mutt. There's a long silence, then someone coughs. Then someone else says, softly but clearly, "We did." and someone else. He didn't promise us anything. And that's why he never broke it. Esteban sputters. He waves his papers. He rants about constitutionality, bureaucracy, the dangers of populist canine movements. But no one argues back, they just wait. Quietly, calmly, and then Sancho walks up the crate. Not jumps, climbs, one paw, then another. He stands beside Esteban, calmly, like a shaggy little statue. Then he sits, the plaza breathes. Sancho lifts a paw and places it gently on the stack of official papers. Esteban stares at it, and the townspeople erupt, not in chaos, but in the kind of warm, unstoppable laughter that has no malice, only joy. Esteban is overwhelmed. He tries to shout over it, but it's no use, the moment is gone. He steps off the crate and mutters something about reassignment to somewhere owl-infested. That evening, the town throws a quiet celebration, not for victory, but for validation. They hang papel picado from the trees, someone roasts corn. A local trio sings a slightly off-key song called Perro del Pueblo. You eat too many fried plantains and laugh when a donkey steals someone's hat. Sancho, he's asleep under the stage. You notice something peculiar that night. Do people speak differently now? Slower, gentler. They interrupt less, they wait longer. There's an unspoken agreement in the air. If a dog can lead without speaking, perhaps we can speak with more purpose. It's not about worship. Sancho isn't a saint. He still chases carts. He still gets startled by cucumbers. Once, he stole half a hem during a wedding. But somehow, he's become more than a mayor. He's become a mirror, not the kind you look into to fix your hair, but the kind that shows who you are when no one's watching. Your small kindnesses, your silent frustrations, the parts of you that ache for simplicity. No one says it out loud. That would ruin the spell. But you see it in how they touch his head, in passing. In how they wait for him before starting council meetings. In how they joke, lovingly, that he's watching, even when he's clearly napping. And as the last song fades, and the torches burn low, you find yourself sitting quietly beside him. No words, just presence, just being. Because some nights, that's the only leadership anyone really needs. The story doesn't end. It simply leans gently into its own breath. You're walking now through a time that no longer keeps a calendar. The days bleed together like watercolor on sun-warmed paper. A year has passed, or maybe two, since Sancho was elected. You've lost count. The town doesn't measure much in months anymore. They measure in seasons of mangoes, in the number of birds nesting above the church, in how many times Sancho chases the paper boy and forgets why. El Rosario has grown quieter in the best way. Not silent, just content. There's a kind of rhythm to things now. People speak in full thoughts. The postman whistles longer tunes. Even Ralmada Moraz, after his long sulk, has returned. Though now he runs a tiny hat shop that sells exclusively to animals. You once saw him fitting a beret onto a goat, and neither of them looked embarrassed. But something is different today. There's a weight in the air, the kind of softness that follows heavy news. You feel it before anyone says it. Sancho is sick. It's not dramatic, not sudden, just the way old things slow down, the way they begin to prefer shade to sunlight, and sleep to walks. His steps are fewer, his eyes dimmer, like lanterns that flicker more than they glow. The whole town knows, and for once, they don't try to fix it. Instead, they surround him, they bring him tortillas soaked in broth, they fluff his favorite cushion near the bakery. Children read him stories they've written about his early years as a jungle explorer. The priest offers blessings, quietly, so as not to wake him. One evening, the town council gathers not in the hall, but around Sancho's spot beneath the jacaranda tree. There's no agenda, no notes, just words. They thank him, not for policies, or reforms, or speeches, but for reminding them to pause, to choose stillness over outrage, to believe in the quiet power of presence. Rosa, now older and slower herself, strokes his ears and says simply, "You showed us how to be human." No one corrects her, and when the time comes, and you knew it would, Sancho slips away not with fanfare, but with the same grace he lived. A soft breath, a shift in the wind, a ripple of understanding through the plaza. The church bells don't ring. Instead, someone plays a flute. The town doesn't hold a funeral, they hold a meal. Everyone brings something. Sweet tamales, corn roasted with chili, bread shaped like tiny paws. They tell stories, real, ridiculous, tender ones, about the dog who sat through every meeting and somehow made them all better. A statue is built, not large, just a carved likeness, seated, head tilted, cast in bronze so gently polished that it looks like it's breathing. But here's what makes you smile. People still talk to it. Every week, someone sits beside that statue and whispers what's going on. The latest gossip, the best jokes, their secret hopes. They ask it questions they're too shy to ask each other, and some swear it helps. No. Really, the school children claim it gives better advice than the math teacher. One farmer insists the statue definitely blinked when he asked about crop rotation. Ernesto the poet swears he heard it sigh when he read his most dramatic haiku. The point is not whether it's true, the point is what it means. Because even in his absence, Sancho remains, in the way decisions are made. In how people pause before raising their voices. In how no one ever forgets to leave a warm tortilla near the tree on quiet mornings. And as you step back from the memory, from the dust, and the marigolds, and the laughter that never quite fades, you feel something settle, like a hand on your shoulder, like a tail brushing past your ankle. You're not sure what to believe. Maybe it's all just a story, a legend told late at night, stitched together with warm light and drowsy truths. Maybe no dog ever ran a town. Maybe people just wanted to believe in something simpler, better, truer. But then again, maybe belief is the point. Because sometimes, it's not about what actually happened. It's about what could have, what should have, what almost did, in a town just strange and brave enough to try. So now you rest. You let go of the no's, the deadlines, the tight corners of thought. You let Sancho lead you one more time, not with barking, but with silence, not with answers, but with presence. He's there, just beyond the edge of your dream. Sitting quietly, waiting. And with a last, deep sigh, you follow. End of script. Sweet dreams.